Good afternoon, you amazing people. You've made it to the next episode of the Lazy Marketing Hour here with me, the host, Al Tepper of TepFu, but more importantly, a fantastic panel and a brilliant special guest. Today, we're talking about the power of networking and referral marketing. So let's meet the special guest first, introducing everybody to Charlie Lawson. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, everybody. Good to be with you here today. I'm very excited.
We're excited too. Yeah, indeed, and excited to hear your perspective on this, your experience in this, which I know you bring lots of experience in this particular area, and I'm sure the panel will have lots of questions for you. And to that end, let's meet that fabulous panel. First up on my, I don't have an order, I just say it as I see it on the screen. So the first person I can see is Simon Hutchings. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Al. Hi, Charlie. Good to see you.
Good to have you here.
Hey, Simon.
Absolutely. Next up is Adam Cockrell. Hello,
hello, Al. Hello, Charlie. Hello, panel. Hello, everybody watching at home.
Beautifully done. And last but by no means least is the incredible Rachel Knott. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here.
Brilliant. Right. Formality aside, we've got almost an hour to talk about this topic. It will be a hard wrap on the hour because I'm going to be respectful of your time and the viewers' time. So where do we start with referral marketing? I think maybe we should put some definition in here. What do we even mean by networking? Charlie, what do we mean by networking? What is networking?
Well, networking is a troubling word for many. I don't know if you've thought this, but you know, networking honestly is this label to describe talking to people. And I think it's what causes so many people. I mean, I always come from a perspective of the unnatural networker. If I could avoid networking, I absolutely do. Might be good at it, might be the thing that I do, but I don't find it that easy. I don't find it comfortable sometimes. And there's lots of other introverts out there who are the same. So yeah, it's this word, it describes it. And I think so many people go and say, right, networking, I'm going to put my networking hat on, I'm going to go to an event or to go on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. And they're putting on this persona, if you like, to go networking. For me, networking is more about a way of life. It's about how you might choose to run your business and run your life. And if you can look to help people and build relationships with people, build meaningful relationships, I think that's what networking is. And you know what comes with it will come through it. Hopefully some fun, some contacts, some business, some friendships. But you know, it's quite intangible sometimes what does come from it. But what it isn't, if you like, is putting your networking hat on and going to make some sales. That's definitely what it's not.
Amazing. Before I open the floodgates to the rest of them, just give us a sort of a 60 or 90 second summary of your experience in this area so that everybody watching knows. Not everyone will know who you are. So just gives a bit of some support to that definition of networking. So
potted history. I used to run a networking organization, or a referral organization, I should say, but it uses networking to do its business. And it's called BNI. You may well have heard of that business. But like I say, I don't really like networking. It's a bit of an elephant in the room when I was running BNI, less so now, I guess. But yeah, where did that come from? So there were two of us that ran the business, myself and my business partner, Tim. Tim, I'm going to say, did all the work. You know, spreadsheets, contracts, all the stuff that made the business work. I swanned around and did the fun stuff, going to meet people, going to meet members, go and do speaking engagements, go and do all the promotional, the public face of the business, if you like. And a lot of people said to me when I was doing this, you know, taking on this role, they said, right, you've got to go and write a book. You have a book. It's a great best business card you never have. Give you opportunity to speak and chant, all that sort of thing. But really. You want to write a book? It wasn't something that I particularly thought, yes, that's something I must do. But you know, when enough people say it, and they keep saying it, and they keep saying it, and different people say it, okay, I'm going to have to write a book. Started writing the book, writer's block, terrible, staring at a screen, going absolutely nowhere. Then a conversation with Tim one day, Tim in the office, my business partner, we were sort of saying, look, he's of like mind to me. Both of us find networking actually quite uncomfortable, quite hard, coming from the introvert side of it. And that's when we came up with the concept of the unnatural networker. You know, I can be very good at it. I can, you know, be great and teach it and do all sorts of things, but actually, I don't find it that easy. So yeah, that's the perspective I come at networking from. I'm always looking at explaining networking from the point of view of someone who'd rather not do it. And I'll give you one quick anecdote to share how that works. This was literally the very first speaking gig I ever had. Okay, and there were 3 speakers that day. I was the last one on, and the first speaker was up, and he started talking about lots of things about networking. Oh, you know, I was going to say that. You know, I was going to cover that sort of stuff. Am I going to have to change my slides, change my talk? And I thought, well, hold on. Can I surreptitiously go up to the guy with the AV and change my slide? I was like, that's not happening. And then he started to share a story about a networking faux pas. And the faux pas that this guy went into was that he went to a network event, he knew he wanted to speak to a specific person, and he spotted him on the other side of the room, thought, right, I'm going to go and speak to him. And he charged over and inserted himself into that conversation that this person was having. But the faux pas he was talking about was the fact that he'd interrupted a conversation. I was like, okay, I get that. I can see that that's a faux pas. For me, my issue would be I wouldn't have necessarily had the guts to go up to him in the first place. So yeah, it's always coming from the perspective of someone who finds it a little bit difficult, finds it hard to do this networking.
I love that, and I can't think of anyone better to learn anything from than somebody who didn't find it really easy, than some, you know, or rather, I wouldn't want to learn something from somebody who found it really easy. I'd actually rather learn something from somebody who found it not easy.
I think that's the thing. You know, so often when you see any expert in any walk of life, I mean, I'll take something totally separate. Professional chefs cooking. You watch a professional chef on TV, and then they're chopping up vegetables fast. You know, I just chop my fingers off if I was trying to do that. You know, and they're saying, "Well, just bang a bit of that in there, bang a bit of this," and then suddenly they got this amazing creation. They're sharing their expertise, and I'm not saying it's not valid, but it's hard for someone who really doesn't know anything about cooking, i.e., me in this case, to really be able to follow that. So yeah, it's that principle of having learned the behaviours myself, having gone through that learning process myself. Probably slightly easier or slightly better place to get it across to people who find it hard, rather than just saying, well, you just got to do this, it's easy. So yeah, no, I agree with you on that.
Amazing. And actually, before I open the panel, there's a guy on YouTube who's become world famous and has a channel with millions because he's an unnatural cook, funnily enough. He's rubbish at cooking, and he's an Australian guy. Some of you may have seen his stuff. He's an Australian guy with long hair and tattoos, and he's very un-PC in his language. He's a young guy, and he just makes the kind of normal food that normal people make, and he makes it in the way we all normally make it. I'll find a link and share it with you all because it's amazing. But he hates cooking, so he finds the joy in it, and it makes for a better cooking result inevitably. Right, panel, we've said enough. Simon, Adam, Rachel, you've heard what the definition of networking is. We're going to be talking about networking and referral marketing. What are your thoughts so far? Do you find networking easy? First of all, I guess the first question. Simon, do you find network? Oh, Adam was about to speak, and then yeah, good Adam. I saw you leaning forward.
We're always fighting each other here on these webinars. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Charlie. I've always felt uncomfortable networking. I present as somebody who probably feels comfortable, I think. That's the sort of feedback I get. But I don't often feel confident or comfortable. I often feel quite anxious. And so it is easy to sort of procrastinate or avoid, you know, and lean into that, justify why I wouldn't maybe go to networking events or show up or want to present and so on. How, as an unnatural networker, I mean, what's your advice there? How have you kind of overcome that, or what tools and tips can you offer us, you know, for those of us kind of struggle with it or fear it?
Well, I think the biggest thing the biggest reason I suspect why people feel uncomfortable is it's not necessarily that they're particularly shy and introverted. I mean, introversion and extroversion on a scale, you know, if you're an extreme introvert or an extreme extrovert, that's actually quite a challenging position to be in. It's all shades somewhere in the middle. So it's not necessarily that you feel shy. I think the biggest challenge that people feel is they're going to be sold to. You know, you're going to get someone coming up to them, you know, whatever time of day it is, and say, right, would you like to buy widgets at 20% off today? No, I don't want to buy widgets. I've never, you know, and for me, that's the biggest thing. And you'll see it on LinkedIn, you'll see it in different places as well. How often do you connect with someone and immediately the message comes back, even on auto reply, saying, yeah, thank you for signing up. Here, you sign here for this, or whatever it might be. It's just straight into a sales and that transactional process. So for me, we've got to get around that. It's about accepting that you're going to have that, and you will have that, because people unfortunately do it, and I don't really understand why. They must get some results from it. There must be some people who are taken in by it, but in the end, it doesn't work, it's not the best way to do it. So to understand that that's not the best way to do it, it's not about going in it to make a sale. Much better in the unnatural networker's shoes is to think, right, let's go and have a couple of good conversations. If I can manage to have a couple of good conversations with two people that I've never met before, then that would be a successful, a successful experience. Don't put the pressure on to try and make a sale. I think that's where people go wrong with it.
It sounds like there's a good comparison there, or similarity between sort of marketing in general and sort of networking as a marketing tool, because really marketing is about conversation. It's about starting conversation with people, building relationships. Yeah,
definitely. And again, if you to the uninitiated, if you say the phrase or the word marketing, you think, right, that's about moving sales, isn't it? And you know, there's plenty of people who know a lot more about marketing than me, but to the layperson, effectively, marketing means grow your business. It means sales. And I think that's so often the preconception that people will go networking with. It's got to be about making sales. And yes, in time, of course, you've got to make sales. You know, it's got to be a return for your effort. But yeah, to go to the event or go to the, as I said earlier, put your networking hat on. Right, I'm off to go and make sales. That's not the way to approach it.
It is fascinating. Great question, Adam. Thank you very much. And it reminds me of a really bad or a really great example of somebody who came to a networking event I was at and in a very sales mode. And Simon, I think you were there and you recall who I'm talking about, beginning with a K, and anyone watching this, they will know who I mean. This person is legendary now. But, you know, nothing turns people off from working with you than someone being too eager, too forceful, you know, and Charlie, you said it's because we're afraid of being sold to. You know, I used to not sign up to emails because I was afraid of being sold to. I'm not even joking, I hated being sold to. And if you called me a salesperson, it was the highest insult. As I've matured, I understand that actually marketing and sales are both the same side of a coin, really. You can't have one. It's not possible to have sales without marketing. It's not possible to have marketing without sales. So you have to solve the problem of finding the comfort. And Adam, I mean, that answer, does that get you more to the comfort of networking, that answer from Charlie, or does it raise even further questions, I guess?
To a certain extent, you know, somebody who works in digital marketing, it's nice and easy for me to hide behind a screen. And, you know, it's the in-person interaction, I think. Funnily enough, though, the experience of in-person interaction generally leaves me feeling really in a good place, you know, and very positive, because I think that social interaction, the experience, the highs and lows, the anticipation, the anxiety, things going well and meeting new people, having new connections, it's all, you end up feeling quite buoyant, you know. So there's often for me an anxiety precursor, and then actually feeling pretty satisfied afterwards. But I think it's that in-person interaction that is scary and uncomfortable and anxiety inducing, whereas just being, you know, on LinkedIn or on social media, or, you know, deploying a blog post or even doing a webinar seems a little less daunting, I guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think you're right. I think, you know, that we all love networking when we've done it. It's the doing it that we don't love. You know, I always come away from networking buzzing. Absolutely, I can tell you, get it. As long as I haven't had a negative experience. It's very rare I get the negative experiences anymore, because I tend to network in rooms that I feel are going to be safe, right? As opposed to
just to jump in there, Aldo. Sometimes for me, I actually find, okay, I'm definitely an unnatural networker, and I find it a little bit challenging to approach networking. And I you know, I can accept the fact I'm going to get sold to. I just know I'm just going to ignore them and move on and find someone, you know, have a nice conversation. Let's put it that way. For me, it's often the anticipation of doing it that's hard. Actually, when you're doing it, it's fine. So, you know, when you go to it, and this is the same for me, any event I've ever been to, might be a you know, a random mitzvah event, or, you know, even when I'm going to a social situation. I'm not a couple of weeks ago, I went to a do with some friends, a 50th birthday party, and I went with my other half. It was more her friends than mine, I can say, so I wasn't necessarily really close to them all. It's a social event that's supposed to be fun. It's a 50th birthday party. It was not a professional thing at all. I still had that slight trepidation. You know, who am I going to speak to? That kind of thing. And for me, when you go into the room, you know, if you go to an event, you'll walk into the room and there'll be a buzz of people over there somewhere, and they're all talking, and there's energy and noise because they're all chatting to each other. The overriding thought I have is everyone looks like they know what they're doing. I'm the only person that doesn't. They all know what they're doing. I'm clueless. I've no idea. And the fact is, I know rationally, if I think about it, that 5 minutes early when they came in, they probably had some of this nervous energy as well. Of course they do. And also, equally, 5 minutes later, when I'm in a conversation with someone, I'll know it's absolutely fine, or I'll be getting on with it. It's great. So yeah, for me, it really is that nervous anticipation, I think, that I struggle with the most. I know that once I'm in a conversation with someone, I can hold a conversation. I'm personal enough to do so. So yeah, for me, it's definitely the anticipation.
Amazing. Simon, Rachel's unmuted first, or I don't know if that was intentional, or either one of you. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think there's a big difference with networking between schmoozing and building relationships. And I think that's once I realized that, that's when I started to enjoy networking. My very first experience of networking was when I was about 21, and I was an actor for many years, and I just graduated from drama school, and we did a showcase in London. That you do a sort of showcase at the end of your course where agents are invited to come and see you perform a short piece. And then at the end of it, you all go to the bar and you network. And to me, this just seemed so awful and schmoozy to kind of then, because it was so obvious that, we just performed and we wanted an agent to sign us, and there was that sort of, I felt slightly desperate, like trying to talk to these people. I didn't really know what to say. And a lot of that was because it was a very uneven playing field. So you had, people that were clearly trying to make a start in a hugely competitive industry, and people that held all the cards because they could say, okay, well, I will sign you, I will not sign you. And that's an extreme situation because, the acting industry, the performance industry is so competitive. When I returned to networking, when I started my business, it was a completely different situation, because instead of going into it going, please, can you hire me? Please sign me, feeling that sort of desperate need. It was more about how can I help you and how can you help me? So, and I think that made all the difference to how I approach networking. So now, when I go to a networking event, I get a lot of the social kind of fears and trepidation, that I think a lot of us get, even when, like Adam, I certainly present as quite a confident person. I think behind the scenes, we're all sort of worrying about certain things, how we're coming across, what people might think of us, and all of those things that you kind of can't really avoid. But I go in and I instead of thinking, how can I sell to this person, or how can I make money out of this conversation, I try to think, how can I help them? What services do they have that might help my clients? Who can I recommend to them? And is there any way that, and then on top of that, is there any way that my business could potentially help them now or in the future? And I've become like almost I'm stealing a term from Simon here now, but like an anti-salesperson. So, not pushing those sales, not thinking of it as marketing, just thinking of it as building conversations. And I think the people that are most successful at referral marketing are the people that stop trying to sell, because there's nothing more of nothing puts you off more when you're networking than meeting someone, like Charlie said, who tries to sell to you. And those people don't last very long. I'm not sure they have a huge amount of success in the referral networking world. So yes, that's my 2 pence.
Thank you. Charlie, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on the word schmoozing. I've written a couple of blogs about this, and I did a video on it, and I was looking. I think it's such a. I saw it was on a TV show, one of those prime time, panel shows, and someone said, "The network is just schmoozing, isn't it?" And it made me think about it, and I've just pulled it up here now, so I just made sure I recalled this exactly. But the dictionary definition of the schmooze is to talk with someone in a lively and friendly way, typically in order to impress or manipulate them. And the manipulate's the key word there. And then how they put words in context for the sentence or a phrase. it's a good time to put yourself forward, to network and to schmooze. So that is the, you know, the cultural definition of what people look at networking and the schmoozing about. It is about trying to get one over on someone. It's trying, and I guess, you know, coming from the industry, you know, the acting industry, as you were saying there, Rich, I'm sure there was some of that going on. I don't doubt that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If it's about trying to do that, then you're quickly going to get found out. There's no quicker damage to your credibility than just trying to, you know, get one over someone to get a benefit from yourself. You know, you see, you know, the old sort of American truisms. I'm going to put that guy out of business. That kind of phrase that doesn't work in networking, because it's about what comes back. It's what goes wrong comes around. You know, there's no way that's ever going to work. So yeah, let's remove the word or the connotation with networking schmoozing entirely.
Well, I think my instant reaction when I was in that situation when I was 21 was, I'm not very good at networking. That was what I did. So I put that label on myself, not very good at networking, because I didn't realize that really networking was just talking to people. That's all it was. And I'm very, very good at talking to people. So I clearly labeled myself wrongly, but that was the assumption I made at the time. But yeah, when I returned to it in the business world, it was a different kettle of fish, definitely.
Yeah.
Simon, before you come in, one thing Rachel said is really interesting there. You said, I'm sure it doesn't work. The reality is, you know, that whole, and I think, Charlie, you said it earlier as well, there's always going to be people who make anything work. Anything and everything can work. The question is the price and the long-term cost. The problem with hunting and cold strategies is they're very short-term strategies. It doesn't mean they don't work in the short term. They may well work. I mean, if you've got, you know, if you've got the ability to mass email 1 million people, I could tell you not to do it, but you're going to find it very difficult to resist not mass emailing those people. If you had GDPR clearance and a legitimate right to mail them, you would find it impossible not to email them a very direct sales pitch. And no matter how much I tell you it's going to cause damage, if you're in a revenue challenged place, you're always going to be making short-term decisions. And the problem is, when you start a business, especially when you start a business, by definition, you're in a revenue challenge place because you've just started a business, unless you're Donald Trump and you've injected $1 billion into it at the start and then you plan to lose the $1 billion. But, you know, the reality is most people start businesses in a place where they are hungry and they need to get results very, very quickly. None of that has any bearing on what will happen next, though. You know, a very good friend of mine and of all of ours, Neil Giller, who you all know, regularly says and reminds people that your budget has nothing to do with my pricing. And it's the same thing here about networking. Your urgent need for revenue has nothing to do with the outcome. If anything, actually, it will negatively influence the outcome. It's more likely to stop money coming towards you than make it coming towards you. But it takes time to recognize that. And in business, it's the long haul, the long relationship that bears the most fruit. We know in digital marketing, Adam, I'm sure would confirm that pound for pound over time, content has the highest ROI. But the problem is it might take you 5 years to get you that ROI. You might go out of business in the first 9 months. That's why there is organic and paid, because sometimes you just want to move quicker. Adam, I'm sure you can come back to that. There's a lot of comparison there. Simon, mindfully, you haven't had a chance yet. What do you want to say about networking and referral marketing?
Networking. Well, I think I was probably, well, I know I definitely was introduced to networking from what some people would say in this area is the ultimate networker, and that's June Corey. You know, she likes to chat, does that one, and a coffee or two. So, I mean, when she gave me a call and introduced me to an event that she was running, it was one of those things where you kind of, it's a business event, I have got to put my networking hat on. But I soon realized that going back to my sort of childhood memories of mum and dad saying to me that if just be who you are, you know, if they don't like you for who you are, they're not worth knowing. And having that in the back of my mind allowed me to kind of, I guess, get away from the people who are going to try to sell me something. You know, I heard the triggers, but like Rachel said, you know, I am totally the anti-sales. I would rather talk the hind end off a donkey rather than trying to sell to someone directly. So, you know, to be able to hear the conversations and think, well, I just need to steer away from that side of the room for the time being, because it's not where I'm going to fit in. And I can concentrate on talking to the people that are going to be interested in chatting about our challenges, what's going on, and things like that. I think that was really good. But, you know, it is a tricky thing. And like Charlie says, you know, I still get that little bit of apprehension of, you know, walking into a room of people. It doesn't matter where it is, you know, who can I talk to, who do I know, who can I relate to, you know, who's going to be the easy conversation to get me feeling at home within whatever environment it is. And I think you know, trying to get over that is always the biggest thing. It probably eases in time to a degree because you're accustomed to it, but it's still that little kind of, I guess it's like going into a business meeting though, isn't it? It's like if it's got a level of importance to you and you don't feel a little bit of apprehension, butterflies, you know, the adrenaline doesn't raise up a little bit, maybe it's not quite for you, maybe it's not enough in it for you, maybe you don't want to be building as many relationships as you think. I mean, look at the podcast. None of us would be here without the fact that we've been talking to each other for years and we've built those relationships, and it's all very positive. So, you know, it's stuff like that, I think, that really think a little tiny bit of nerves is always good going into a room, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to jump in there on you know, avoiding the bad conversations, the more salesy, transactional ones, and getting onto firmer ground, if you like, where you're going to have some more fun and more, you know, enjoy the process more. And for me, one of the biggest things that people, or reasons people struggle with networking, is because they think it has to be talking about business. It's a business event, so we're talking about business. And sometimes, I'd say quite often, other people's businesses aren't the most interesting thing in the world. Let's just say that very politely. We all understand what we do is very interesting to ourselves, and, you know, it's our life and, you know, everything we do, but it's not necessarily interesting to everyone. So it's about where you can focus the conversation to make it more interesting. And my suggestion of the best one, my favorite networking question, I'm going to put it that way, is to actually steer totally clear of business and ask, what are you into? Let's imagine you've got a free day, you haven't got any obligations to anyone, you don't even have to take the kids out, you can do what you want. What do you spend your time doing? Because when you ask that question, you find out what people are into. When you get to have that discussion, what's really powerful is when you find you have common ground with someone. So if someone says, oh, you know what, I love running, well, I'm away, you know, I love running. So I'm just, you know, it's an easy conversation. And when you're talking about something you like, something you're interested in, something you're passionate about, well, it makes it a more interesting conversation, to be honest. And if we're saying that networking is about building relationships and we're not going to make a sale right then and there anyway, it doesn't really matter if you're not talking about this. Let's just connect to the human level, build a meaningful relationship. That's what I think so often is missing. And then, you know, you can take it where you want. And okay, great if you find common ground. What if you don't find common ground? I was chatting with someone just a bit about this before on a previous call, and he said, well, what if you don't find common ground? I said, well, let's say someone starts talking to me in a networking conversation. I say, what do you do? You've got a free day. What are you into? And they say, I like crochet. Now, I don't like crochet. I know nothing about crochet. I can't really ever see myself liking crochet. Forgive me if I've offended any of you if you're big crochet fans. But what was interesting about the conversation, we still had a conversation about it. And while I couldn't contribute in that way, I was able to listen, and I was able to hear someone talk passionately about a subject that they're into. And you know what? That builds a relationship. That makes me see what drives that person. It helps you make connections. It helps you follow up with them later. It's such a powerful question to take it away from business entirely and just get into, you know, what makes them tick as human beings. You know, if you're feeling apprehensive about getting into conversations where you think, well, I'm not, over my head here, don't talk about that. Talk about more interesting stuff.
I love that. There's no rule of what you should and shouldn't talk about. And I think being comfortable is the most important thing. I think that's brilliant, Charlie. And I think in a world where people buy from people, actually, it's not the business stuff that's going to win you the deal. Actually, it's the relationship stuff that's going to win you the deal. It's the softer skills. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk talks and has been talking for the last 4 years about soft skills and the role of soft skills in business. and how actually emotional intelligence is breaking new ground in business, because actually we are all, not just individually, but as a species, we are evolving and maturing. It might be imperceptible, it might be like the movement of an iceberg, but if we spoke to people who were in business in the 1950s, I think they would tell you how far we've changed over the last 70 years. Even if you went back to the 1970s, frankly, even if you went back to when things like BNI were launched in the mid-80s. In fact, I remember a story about BNI coming to the UK, and even back then they said it wouldn't work because it's too American. Well, here we are 38 years old later, and it works because people change over time. And so the relationship, you're not going to, here's the thing, if you're going to networking thinking you're going to win a piece of business, I think you're almost certainly not. You're almost likely to push it further away. If you go to networking thinking, oh, I wonder who I'm going to meet, this could be interesting, you're more likely to find business that you want, not business that just rocks up and randomly,
But the word random is an important one in networking, because it is the random nature of the connections that you make that really drive the success of networking. You just never know people. It's not about the person you're talking to, because, as I said, it's not about doing business with them, or certainly not right then and there. It's about who they know and what connections do they have that make a difference. And I was talking to a lawyer about this only the other day, in the sense looking at the benefit of it. And lawyers are an interesting case. I'm working a lot with them at the moment, and the challenge I get thrown back at quite a lot is, because they're often on billable hours, they say, well, I charge my time out at 300 quid an hour, just put a figure on it. I'm going to be at that event for 2 hours. That means I need to see a return of 600 quid to make it worthwhile, to make it hit their billable target, if you like. But never how it works. We've already discussed that at length. So yeah, it's that random nature of where the opportunities come or where the connections come from that I think makes networking really powerful.
Simon, you've just unmuted. That means you must have something to say.
No, I was just going to add on to that. So the random nature, and also what feels right for you. There's lots of different. I know we've mentioned a specific networking events group, but there's lots out there of lots of different styles. So some of us might prefer a more structured approach. Some of us might like those kind of evening gatherings that there's a lot of creativity. We talked about this in the green room earlier about maybe a Shoreditch area has a certain type of, maybe a younger group of business owners that just tend to go out for a beer and something to eat on a Thursday night, and that's their form of networking. It's a lot more relaxed rather than maybe the morning breakfast business meeting that we tend to think of, or at least maybe people who are slightly older tend to think of, rather than these kind of just gatherings of people having a beer and catching up, really.
Well, this is where I'd come back to with the thing I said at the start. I said, for me, networking is more about a way of life. And to chuck something controversial in there that would probably immediately get a no response is to say, well, can you network at a funeral? And the instant response probably from most people, well, no, you've got to respect the occasion. And yes, you do absolutely have to respect the occasion. But what we're saying is that networking isn't necessarily about talking about your business. It's not necessarily, it's certainly not about selling. So it's about connecting with people and talking to people and just building relationships. So you mentioned young folks in Hoxton, Shoreditch sort of way, who will go out for a beer and that's their networking. Well, have you ever been had a few friends around for dinner? That's networking. You wouldn't describe it as such. Have you gone out to the pub with some mates? Yeah, that's networking. You wouldn't describe it as such. So it's just different ways of doing it. If we're focusing on networking the right way, and it's just getting to know people and helping people out where you can and building connections and getting to understand people and what makes them tick, then you can network literally anywhere, including at a funeral.
I love that. I think you're right. And the last thing Simon said and the last thing you just said made me realize that actually the problem that most people experience with networking and referral marketing isn't that it's not about its efficacy, whether it works or not. It's about its execution, how we do it. And the problem is, a lot of the time, when in my experience, people who aren't getting a result from networking, in my experience, generally, when I've looked into it, they're going about it in a way that's more sales oriented than relationship oriented. And so I'm kind of not surprised. So, one of the challenges with networking is I don't know. And this is one of the things you have to kind of submit to. You don't know whether someone's a prospect or not when you start speaking to them. With prospecting, you absolutely know that someone's a prospect before you start speaking to them. But when you go networking in a room, you can see people's name perhaps, but even if you can see their profession, you don't know whether they are a prospect or not. So you have to invest time and energy into starting a conversation relationship. Does that mean you end up wasting a lot of time, Charlie? I mean, you know, how does that swing into play?
I don't like to use the phrase wasting time, because I don't think that's what you're doing. You've got to put the hard yards in to make networking work. There's no quick fix. You can't just click your fingers and say, right, I'm going to meet that person. Great. Suddenly they're going to become my next best client or a referral partner for life. It's just not like that. If it was, we'd all be millionaires and we'd be retired. We wouldn't need to do this podcast. Look, no, it's about investing the time in it to make it work. And yeah, you're right. You don't know who you're going to speak to. You've no idea who they are. You've no idea if they could become a client. You know, we're talking about that from the prospect point of view. I'd also talk about from the prospect and then becoming a referral partner. So you might never do business with them, but they happen to work with your target market. You work with their target market. And you can share a lot of contacting clients with each other. So yeah, I wouldn't say that that's it's a waste of time. You've got to go through that process to make it work. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, and somebody must know. I mean, every single person you meet must know somebody of relevance to you. So on that basis, it's actually not possible to meet someone who is completely meaningless and irrelevant to you, because everyone's going to have some relevance. So then it's about how you're doing it, what questions you're asking, you know, and how effectively you're deploying networking as a strategy. And make sure before the end, Charlie's got a fantastic scorecard which will help you assess your strengths and weaknesses on networking, and I'm sure we'll drop it. We'll make sure it's featured. Go to his website, you'll find it. But then it's just about becoming better at networking, isn't it? It's becoming about more focused, so that you ask the right questions. You also know what you're doing. A lot of people start networking before they even understand their own business. You know, they just don't know enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You will get better. Like with everything, you get better at doing things with practice. And if you practice doing, you'll get much more able to hone in quickly on the people who would be definite potential prospects or definite potential referral partners. You're right. Sometimes you'll be in conversation with people, and you can see there's no realistic likelihood of anything particularly happening. But if you practice what I was saying earlier about having fun conversations about what people are into, trying to find common ground, at least you can still have a good conversation before you move to someone else and see where they go. So yeah, it's about putting the time in to make it work. Never know who people know. You know, you can't necessarily find that out in a quick conversation at an event. So for me, networking is all about the cup of coffee next week, or you know, a Zoom call in a couple of days' time. It's about finding out if there's enough synergy to make it worthwhile to have continue that conversation and continue to build that relationship. And by the way, when you continue to build that relationship, we're still not going to go in for the hard sell. We're still not going to say, right, give me referrals, because we've still got to generate the relationship and build that over time.
I think that the interesting point around that synergy thing there as well is that it should become easier. It shouldn't need to be a chore to keep in touch with someone if there isn't that synergy available. You know, if you're feeling that there's kind of a weird bond between the person you're speaking to, then to be able to book, how you fixed for the next couple of weeks? Yeah, I can make space for you on Thursday in a couple of weeks' time. Instantly, you're starting to feel that there's a level of warmth there, which will automatically allow you to steer away from the people who are just thinking it's a one-way conversation. Yeah, the unnatural networker becomes very natural at that point, because you effectively it's just it turns into a friendship, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. When it comes to the unnatural networking thing, I know that I can have a perfectly good conversation with anybody. But you're right. When you start to build that relationship and you get to know them, you've had a couple of pieces of contact, you see them the third, the fourth, fifth time, whatever it might be. Yeah, you don't go into networking to make friends, but in the end, you do become friendly with the people you met networking if you're doing it properly. If you're really consistently trying to build relationships with them and try and help them.
I think there's Al's talking, but I think you're muted.
No, go for it. You were talking. Go. I'm muted.
I was going to say, I think there's like a whole other side to networking that we've not really touched on, which I've certainly really benefited from. And I started networking right at the start of my business. It's the way that I got my first couple of clients through referrals, not directly, but through referrals, through relationships that I'd built through networking. And one of the things that I massively still benefit from and always have is the amount that I learn through networking, just by speaking to other business owners, finding out what other business owners are thinking about, finding out the kind of things that are bothering them, especially because, you know, my services, I sell directly to businesses. So it's kind of a type of market research, if you will. And I've learned so much about, you know, how to run my business. I've met some contacts, like a lot of the people in this room, who have really, really supported me. I think it's about, you know, that aside from the marketing side of thing, which is obviously the reason you do it, there's a massive bonus, which is you find people that will support you on your business journey, and who become a big part of your business journey. And then they will naturally turn into referrers as well, because they're kind of growing with you and they're supporting you on that. And I think that's something that it's like a byproduct of networking that doesn't get talked about very much, but is actually almost as valuable as the referral marketing itself.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many other benefits to networking. That is just one of them. And yeah, touching base with the business community is definitely one. The one I often focus on is I call it being a gatekeeper. And there's a mate of mine, nothing to do with anything with my history of networking, but he does say to me every now and again, I'll get a text from him, I'll get a call, and he says, you know that networking thing you do? And I'm like, yeah, I know that networking thing. And I know what he's coming. He needs a plumber, he needs a web designer, he needs someone in his life so I know I'm going to have a referral. So the ability to become a gatekeeper in your community is such a powerful thing for your network, because it means that you're someone that your network see as knows a lot of people, can connect them to a lot of people, and that, effectively they're all going to come to you for help when they need it. And that's such a great position to have in your business. So yeah, totally with you. There's so many other facets to networking than just generating business.
I think it's really fascinating the parallels with you know, web design and digital marketing, you know, and the other types of marketing that we do here. It's relationships. I think that's my networking journey has really taught me that this is really about relationships. I think that you've been speaking to that quite a bit, Charlie. You know, the quality of those relationships, how much you invest in them. That's a part of any business, whether you do networking or otherwise, because for a service-based business, you want to have a relationship with your clients, you want to take them on a journey. And my experience has been often the quality of those relationships impacts the outcome of that customer journey, and whether or not they stay with you and there's loyalty to you or the brand. And I can also see, just kind of reflecting on our conversation here, that bringing those networking skills into the customer journey process is really, really valuable. I think our job as marketeers is to start a conversation with people, and we generally do that with, you know, Simon might produce some really amazing branding, and in conjunction with Al and Rachel would tell the story of the business, the why behind why someone's doing something, in order to create interest and trust with that potential client. If they've never met us before, in networking in person, we can go up and we can say, hi, I'm Adam, and let's have a conversation about something, mutual interests, and we like each other. That's great. We're developing trust. We need to do that from a digital perspective. We need to do that with the written word. We need to do that with visuals, with colors. And it's challenging because, you know, it's not a human interaction thing until you can get on the phone with somebody. But at that point, you can bring the networking skills into play and start developing that relationship with that person. So I can see how being accustomed to networking, having some skills in networking, and then bringing that into your sales and marketing process for closing a client, and also taking them on a journey with you and developing that relationship over time is very much central to networking skills.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like I've said a couple of times, it's a way of life as much as anything. And we were talking about this just before the call started, about how They don't teach this stuff in universities. They don't teach it at school. I've my son's at secondary school now. I've just become a governor in the school. Something I wanted to do for a long time, and I've offered to say, come and do some training, or training is probably the wrong word at this stage, but you deliver some thoughts on how to build meaningful relationships for kids going out and starting their careers. I did a business degree, and not once did any of these words, any of the stuff we're talking about, come up in that course. And yeah, I think it's a big issue I think we've got in society. We don't talk about these soft skills of building relationships, and whether that applies to just trying to meet someone at a network event, or to, like you're saying, building a relationship with a client there, Adam, or just spending time with friends and helping people in life. It's so important, and it's something that isn't necessarily regarded as an important skill within the education system. And I think that's a problem.
Definitely. I mean, these are skills that can be learned, that can be taught, that can be practiced, that can be improved upon, and they benefit us, like you say, in every area of our lives. And relationship principles and skills are so transferable, whether it be personal or professional. I see them as absolutely critical, and that was a huge light bulb for me. And understanding that it's not just about how good my marketing is, or how good my service delivery is, or my product is. It's really critical to how good I'm at building relationships with people, because people buy from people. At the end of the day, you can't really take the human element out of business. It's really about finding the ideal client, and the clients finding their ideal provider or product designer. So,
and just one other one to say on that, it's people buy from people. That applies in whatever industry you're talking about, whatever industry and type of business you're talking about, size of business. I've often had it where people say, well, I'm in the corporate world. Corporates don't need, to learn this stuff today. But the fact is, if company A is going to do business with company B, it's not the company that makes that decision. It's a person within that company. And they're going to build a relationship with the person in the other company. So it applies, I guess we're coming from this often from a small business perspective, but across industry, professional services, where I'm focusing, but it applies just as much in big business as it does in small business.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in those bigger businesses who play golf during working hours, because that's where they do a lot of the deals. That's where they build their relationships. So having time in part of their day to actually network and socialize with clients and prospects is, I'm sure, critical at any state, any sort of size of business.
Yeah, and you raised another point there. You mentioned golf there. For some people that will make them freak out and go, "Oh God, business on a golf course, the last thing I ever want to do." And I totally get that. But it does raise the point that it doesn't have to be at a networking event.
It's kind of how you approach it, isn't it?
Can't do the word in exclamation mark. It's about where you do it. You could go for a walk with some friends. That can be networking. You can play golf if you want to. Maybe some people would say golf is the walk, just spoiling a good walk, isn't it? That's what some people say about golf. But whatever it is you're doing, go to the theatre, go to a sports event, go to listen to music together, whatever. It's any common interest could be a networking ground.
Well, I found that it's really in those social instances, that's where the bonds are formed, and that's where it can accelerate the relationship to a business point. And I think it's about how you do it, isn't it? If you're on the golf course, and you're constantly talking about your business and clients and who you want and all the rest of it, then you're really selling. You're not really networking. But if you're there just to hang out, play some golf, have a bit of a chat, if you're asked about your business, there's an opportunity to talk about it, but you don't have to, because you're creating a connection and a relationship with that person, which is going to keep you in their mind, isn't it? And it's so if it does come up, oh well, I know Adam, and we hang out, so I'll talk
and more meaningfully in their mind as well. It's not just a catchy slogan from an ad. It's actually, oh, that guy was really good fun to be around. I liked being around him. I could work with him. People make decisions. We all say people buy from people all the time. Nobody disagrees. I've not met anybody in the world in my travels who's ever said, no, I don't agree with that. People buy from computers now. Well, because they don't buy from computers. And one of the problems of the last 30 years, as I see it, you know, going back to 1994, I can't quite believe that's, or 1993, I can't quite believe that's 30 years ago. But back then, beginning of the internet, the power and the value of the personal relationship was well founded. The internet has given us an incredible suite of digital channels to sell through, but the human is a little bit removed from that because it's digital, it's screen to screen before it's people to people. And so I'm genuinely certain that we have created a generation of people who don't remember what it was like before 1994. They'll never know how business was done in the 70s, 80s, 90s before the internet. And so actually the value of people is greater today, not lesser. It's more valuable. It's more true to say people buy from people. And you know, in every walk of life, again, nobody ever disagrees with the concept of word of mouth being very powerful. Word of mouth is absolutely the holy grail. That's how anybody goes viral ever. You can't go viral without word of mouth. It's me sending a meme to Adam and Adam sending it to 5 mates, and those, you know, word of mouth is everything. And yet people don't hear word of mouth when they hear networking. They don't hear referral marketing when they hear word of mouth. They don't equate reputation as having any role in the transaction. That's bananas. How could you, who here would ever buy off of anybody whose reputations we didn't at least examine or at least look at? You know, we're not just going to buy stuff from people randomly. And so if I go and play golf with someone, which I'm not doing because I'm not really built for golf. Well, I'm probably more odd job. I'm built for carrying the, you know, if you remember Odd Job from the Bond movie, I'm built for carrying the golf clubs with a little bowler hat with a little steel rim. I could do that all day. But
doesn't that mean you're going to chuck the hat and try and put?
Yeah, I can. I mean,
yeah,
if you need me to dispatch of your opponent, we can, you know, just get the old hat out and go for it. But you know, so if I went and played golf with someone, the last thing I do is talk about business, because I want them to be able to buy from me. So how are they going to get to know me if I just throw a blasted brochure in their face? Ugh, how dull. I mean, TepFu's marketing materials are fantastic. I've got great people around me, but I'd still rather talk to you about me than my marketing material. I mean, my marketing materials are brilliant, but they're not as good as me. And that's the point, especially in professional services, Charlie, especially with law firms where reputation is extremely monetized and weaponized. It's very carefully managed. You ask any lawyer where most of their business comes from, and they'll say, from my network, from the people I know.
I think that's the thing. So many people say it. Everyone loves getting a referral. I mean,
yeah,
who doesn't love getting a referral? And the challenge is, it's a reactive thing. You have to wait until one drops in your lap. Brilliant when it happens, but you have to wait. The key is, can you make it a proactive part of your business? Generating referrals, you know, can turn it into a strategy. If you've got a strategy to do that, then that's where you can really win and move your business forward. Yeah, that's definitely where I help people get to put that strategy together.
Well, and that's where you come in your new world. Your prior world, you were leading the networking charge, the biggest networking organization in the UK, and globally the biggest as well. And now taking all that knowledge and helping other people make their networking more effective, so that, you know, we were talking about this in the green room, and I'll be very careful with my choice of language here. You know, you can spend a lot of time networking and planting lots of opportunities out there. You can, you know, you can sow lots of seeds. He says, terrified. But the reality is, the best approach is to stack the deck as much as possible. So you wouldn't go networking in a room that was clearly not for you. So, for example, I'm not going to go networking at, I mean, I'm trying to think of some wildly weird room. I'm not going to go to the annual gathering of the Diamond Bourse members in Hatton Garden. Why? Because it's probably not a fit for me. They may know people I could know, but I'd much rather go networking in a room of business owners, because I'm much more likely to have value for them and them have value for me. But lots of people spend a lot of time just wildly, networking in every direction. So Charlie comes in like a wrecking ball, but in a positive way, to give you that focus, I guess. And so basically, networking should have a strategy and a plan, shouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, it's just random acts of networking. Oh, I'm going to jump on LinkedIn here. I'm going to go to that event there. I'm going to, go and have a cup of coffee with that person over there. Yeah, all good in short, small hits. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but yeah, for me, a networking strategy, a referral strategy to bring a consistent stream of referrals into your business to really grow it over time. Yeah, that takes putting a proper strategy together, and yeah, that's what I love helping people to do.
You can't just wing it, can you? I mean, you can wing it a little bit, but if you want to take it seriously, you've got to put a strategy in place. Otherwise, You're just taking someone else's strategy, I guess.
And you're taking control of it. That's the thing. We said we like referrals, but it's a reactive process to wait for one to come along.
Yeah,
it's much better to make it proactive and actually drive that and make that happen.
Well, and you're more likely to get the kind of referrals you want as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us here have received what we would call a bad referral in our lives? Well, all of us, right? And that's no fun. It's no fun for you receiving it. It's no fun for the person who's giving that referral. They didn't want to give you a bad, well, unless they're particularly twisted, they didn't want to give you a bad referral unless they didn't like you. It's a hell of a way to find out, let's face it. But they want to introduce you to someone because they like you, because they trust you, they think you can help people. How devastating is when it's a bad referral, when it's a totally not, it doesn't fit, So have a plan, have a strategy, know who you're looking for, know where you're likely to find them, know what you're going to say. Now go and build relationships in that environment, and everything goes a lot quicker, I would imagine.
That is indeed the way to do it, Al.
Amazing. Well, look, we are running out of time. We've probably got a couple of minutes left. I try and make sure everyone gets to speak. I think everyone's had a fair shot, but this is where we get to mop up in case we've missed anything. So final words, we'll leave Charlie to the last, of course. Can you believe an hour's gone already? It's so fast. Simon, what are your key takeaway from this?
Well, blimey, there's so much in there, isn't it? I mean, I think, having, like Charlie said, really recently, it's all about having that strategy involved. Don't just be going out and having random coffees with groups of people that you can't help and they can't help you. So if you can put that strategy together and make it meaningful, then that's going to be the best part for the business. That's one taking away anyway. Brilliant. So have anything to do word of mouth, networking, referral marketing. Have a strategy, have a plan. Don't just rock up and wing it. And as someone once said, I think it was David O'Dell once said, he introduced me to the concept of business ninjas. And what business ninjas do is just go networking and fling cards out like throwing stars, expecting stuff to happen, and it never does. Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Adam.
For me, my key takeaway was the little tip that Charlie gave about asking somebody what they do on their time off in order to sort of spark conversation around their hobbies and interests by saying, look, forget work, all the rest of it, got the day off, you can do whatever you want, what would you do? And I'm excited to put that into practice.
I like that. Just on that, I do that in every single networking conversation I ever have. I will do that, and it makes for a much more interesting conversation.
I think it's brilliant. At the end of every one-to-one I have, I don't do it very often these days, but when I used to have lots more one-to-ones, at the end of every one-to-one, my final question would be, tell me something amazing about yourself. And almost to a man and a woman, everyone would go, oh, well, there's nothing amazing about me. And then 20 seconds later, I'm finding out they were in the Olympic shot put team for Romania in 1976. Nobody's interesting in business. Everybody's interesting in life. So I love that, how you bring it into the start of the conversation to break the taboo of we're both new here, what's going on. I think it's brilliant. Rachel, what's your key takeaway?
I think it's not something that we've talked about specifically, but it's something that I've been thinking about while listening to other people speak, is that there's a lot of value in relationships that already exist. And it's not always about meeting new people. Networking isn't always about going out there and adding to your contacts list. It's about nurturing those existing relationships. And, there's a whole list of people that I've met through networking that I've never kind of followed up with fully. And you know, there's a whole host of people we could all be working together, we could all be referring to each other. So yeah, it's food for thought. I'm gonna be, you know, looking into reaching out to some people that I've maybe let slip away.
I love that for two reasons. First of all, because it reminds me of how often people tell me they need more leads, and they rarely need more leads. They've got loads of leads, they're just not doing anything with them. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, it reminds me of a fantastic quote from who else could possibly swing in at this late hour with a quote, and it would be Ivan Meisner, of course, himself, the founder of BNI and the godfather of modern networking, so to speak. And he says it's better to have a network that's a mile deep, unless I've got it wrong, it's better to have a network that's a mile deep rather than a mile wide. Is that the right? I've got it right.
That's right, yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You know, there's loads of people. I'd love to spend more time with Simon, Adam, Rachel, and Charlie. What's the point of putting new people into my sphere when I can't even see them? So I agree, Rachel. Look at what's around you. Look at who you're already connected with. You know, networking is an ongoing thing. It's not something you do once and then just put a business card in a drawer and disappear. It's about that ongoing nurture relationship. Brilliant. Charlie, last thoughts for you.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that point from Rachel, actually. I think that's such a good point. So often it is all about meeting new people, and yeah, it is, sure, but it's so much power and depth. You know, it's like, is it easier to find a new client or to sell more to existing clients? It's much easier to sell to existing clients because the relationship is already there. They, you know, you've done work for them. I'm assuming you've done a good job for them, so it's probably easier to make that leap to selling more to them. So yeah, it's very similar in the networking context. You know, you've already got, you don't have to, there's hard yards to go through to build the relationship. So yeah, sure, go and meet new people, but also spend time cultivating your existing network. Continue to water those plants as the seed has grown into a plant. Let's continue that analogy. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And the other one, just come out of this, it's just a reminder that the need for more upskilling on soft skills. It's such an important skill of building meaningful relationships. That's somewhere we've got to keep spreading the word to the community, business community, the social community. As I said, you know, in my son's school, I want to help them there as well. So I think it's such an important thing to do.
We've definitely got to teach our younger generations about this networking stuff. Definitely, they're going to need it even more than us, I suspect. Some brilliant takeaways there. I think the overall takeaway for me is have a plan, have a strategy. Everything else was great, but I think that's the thing that singularly made the biggest difference to me over the years. And I have to thank people like Charlie, like Phil Berg, like Neil Giller for course correcting me along the way through the power of BNI, because it's only because I now know how to make networking more effective, and I'm still learning, but it's only because of that I'm here, that we're all here, because that's why Simon, Adam, Rachel, and I are on this podcast every month, because of networking, because we like each other. I hope they like me. We'll find out if they don't. If they're not back next month, turns out I was wrong. On that note, it is the end of this month's podcast. Charlie, remind us of your URL. It'll be all over the text anyway, but just remind us, if people want to get better at networking, where should they start? So,
website is unnaturalsuccess.com, unnaturalsuccess.com. LinkedIn is another easy place to find me as well. You mentioned the scorecard, the how good at you at networking test. You can see that on the website, but you can also see it on my first featured post on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn, connect there. That's a good place to do it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Next month, we're going back to the value of video. We've got Paul Furlong joining us to talk even more. We had such a great chat about video last time. We're going to have another chat, and we might be doing that on a more regular basis, because clearly we're in a world of video now, whether we like it or not. So we've all got to get better at it.
I'm going to have a listen to that. Paul Furlong's a good guy, isn't he?
He's great. He's very knowledgeable. He knows his stuff. We've done one episode with him, and it was so potent. We had to have him back for more, because we ran out of time. Too many questions, Charlie. But thank you all for being here. Charlie, thank you very much for making the time.
Pleasure.
And Simon, Adam, and Rachel will speak. Everybody out there, have a good day. See you soon.